one HR platform for global teams. They're here to simplify every aspect of managing a global team, from culture, onboarding, local payroll, and compliance. And here we have some people still chatting on our left-hand side with the really nice hat and the glasses and the other set of glasses. Hey, you guys, how's it going? You guys ready to get started? Fantastic. Okay, so we are now going to introduce Aaron Goldsmid and Jessica Ledoux. So Aaron Goldsmid is a product head of Deal, where he looks after the company's connectivity and fintech suite of products. Aaron brings more than 20 years of product and engineering leadership experience and has helped to build and scale some of the world's most beloved products. He previously served in product leadership at roles at Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, Prosper, Kiva.org, and most recently as VP Product GM of Twilio's flagship messaging product. Aaron graduated from Columbia University in New York with a degree in computer science and is an active angel investor and advisor focusing on mission-driven technology companies. And Aaron will be interviewed by Jessica Ledoux. She is the community manager for Deal and Americas for Deal, where she focuses on community building, engagement, and event management. Jess has 4+ years of experience in immigration with a focus on the international startup community. She was previously an event marketing manager for NAM at Deal and has played many important roles in customer lifecycle marketing and customer success, with an emphasis on immigration at LegalPad, acquired by Deal in August 2022, Microsoft Corporate, External, and Legal Affairs. So without any further ado, Aaron and Jessica, please welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Now? All right. Thanks, everyone, for having us. I think I saw a lot of you yesterday at the barbecue, so it's nice to see your faces again. But I'll jump right into it. I know everyone's hungry, so we'll get through and we'll introduce ourselves about what we do, and we'll leave room for a lot of questions. I know hopefully you guys have a lot of questions for us. We love them. All right, Aaron. So first question, people want to know, what is Deal? What is the deal with Deal?
Thank you. And also, I want to say, I recognize that this is the either best or worst slot, which is the one right before lunch. So doze off if you need to, but I'll try and keep it interesting at least. So Deal is we talk about this the sort of global mobility soup to nuts. The way that I think is kind of most helpful for it is we are the operating system for the people who work at your company. Or cradle to grave. We can help from creating the entity to hiring your first contractors to doing your payroll domestically, globally, immigration, everything around, and the way we think about it is we're kind of the most worker friendly HR platform, but really it's your operating system for your people. And so kind of everything along that. I mean, our origins are around, international employment, enabling global teams. So that's still sort of our DNA, but actually I think it's been, as we moved into, traditional payroll, HRIS, stuff like that, we started with the thing that was really hard. If you need to figure out what it looks like in 140 countries, it's not that hard to do it in one. So, I think it's been a really great sort of set of products. People are super receptive to it. And we think we help a lot of people do great work.
Agreed. All right. So tell us about what your role is. What is your role at Deal?
Management overhead. No. So I look after a bunch of our product suite, namely sort of the fintech stuff. So as you can imagine, we do payroll for a lot of places. An immense amount of money goes through our systems. Making sure that things like people get paid on time, but also that you're managing your foreign exchange risk, and also the connectivity. Because again, if you're thinking of yourself as the OS of the thing, you need to be able to integrate with, if it's a Brex or if it's a this or if it's a that, so that you have any tool that you want naturally does that. Or you even things like provisioning, Gmail accounts to your employees. So I look after that, and also sort of our data team and a couple other things.
Many hats. All right. Tell us about yourself a little more. Like, what was your journey to Deal from an entrepreneurial perspective? So tell us about your experience from as an entrepreneur, a founder, and what brought you to Deal? What sold you on us?
So obviously you heard, which is hearing it personally, the most awkward intro ever, because I'm like, wow, I'm old and I've done a bunch of stuff. But for me, I think there's a few things. If I take a look at my last role at Twilio, I had the most international team, right? Most people, everyone lived within 100 miles of here. 80% of my, couple hundred folks were global. And what I learned in terms of doing that was a few things. One is like talent is everywhere, and enabling that and being able to sort of give people great quality of life, great wages all around the world, and being able to sort of enable that was like really, really powerful. But at the same time, I looked after a few acquisitions, trying to bring people over in countries that we didn't have entities. It just was broken. I mean, beyond broken. It was unviable. And so when I was sort of trying to look for my next thing, being able to solve that problem and being able to enable that, like the fact that, I grew up in New York, I had to move here basically this is the epicenter, that's why you all are here. This is the center of gravity for the thing. But being able to have that across the entire planet just opens up so much opportunity for humans. Also, this thing is obviously experiencing incredible growth and shipping a ton of product. But for me, it was being able to have that impact and the aspirations, sort of being able to sort of solve an entire ecosystem worth of problems, not just a single point thing.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about your vision for the company and for the HR industry at large.
So first, I really like, and I started my career in sort of consumer, social, stuff like that. You heard a couple of things. I have grown to really love sort of pickaxe and shovel businesses, right? In part because they are the lifeblood of other companies. Like, they need to work. You need to get them right. If you enable these things, like a founder should not need to be an expert in, global payroll or enablement. Like, let us do that so you can do the thing that you're really good at. And so I think that's like a really great business to be in. That was very much what we did at Twilio. And so, I'm sort of deeply passionate about that. And I also think that, like a lot of sort of what's been thought of as like traditional back office stuff, like we're all entrepreneurs, we're all tech people of some sort. Like, usually that stuff's kind of garbage. Like, it's just not where the best work is. Like, the experience is terrible. The things are clunky. I'd sort of, not to be swearing about sort of like, every time I had to log into ADP, it was 100% password reset experience. Like, I've never remembered my password for that thing. I actually don't even know why they bother. They should just do the password reset. But these are like super critical things. And so what happens if you do them well and you do them in a way that sort of makes it super easy from, creating the entity, creating your company, hiring your first person, all the way up through, massive strategic enterprises that have multiple entities, very, very complicated systems, and being able to grow with that. And so I think about sort of a cradle to grave thing, being able to sort of be on the journey, have one thing. So you're not having to say like, oh, you kind of are in this product suite for, I think if it's like invoicing or something, right? Like, and you're at the point where like, oh wait, QuickBooks no longer works for us. And so we need to level that up. But being able to sort of be that entire journey across kind of, to being like a global, huge company.
Yeah, it's really great. This one's a fun question. I really like this one. Tell us a bit more about your experience with working like in a remote culture versus an in-person culture, and what makes for a high performance culture.
So when I started my career, it was at Microsoft. There was no remote culture. It just wasn't a thing. Honestly, it was like, there wasn't even a work from home day. And there's like some things about that are really great, like the hallway chat, stuff like that. and I've been at companies sort of been in hybrid. What I think is that all companies have like a fundamental DNA. And it kind of really comes from the founders and the early moments of who it is, right? Like the DNA of Google is about algorithms. If you compete against Google on an algorithm, you probably will lose. If you compete against Google on social, you're going to do okay. Same thing. Like, I think, and companies who I think started off as being sort of very in-person, very geographically centric, have a really hard time to like change their DNA in that way. What I will say is Deal is from its origin a remote company, and it is high performing. We are growing as fast, if not faster, than any other rocket ship hypergrowth company in the history of tech. Profitable. All of these things, we're nailing it. And I think what is, because it's in the DNA. So the thing there is that you also need to sort of make sure you're maintaining a culture, because there is something fundamentally transactional about a Zoom call or a Google Meets or a Slack message. And so how do you kind of continue to do that? What I will say is, we're going 24/7, right? I now have to remember if I wake up in the middle of the night to never pick up my phone, because there are teams all around the world who are like going full stop, and I'm like, let me help them. But it really has created a culture where, like, because it's in our DNA, it's strongly written. Asynchronous communication is like very native to us. Like, we don't use email. Slack is our office. And because folks are all around the world, like everyone, it's kind of the funnest thing I do is like the first time every one-on-one, I'm like, hey, where in the world are you this week? And it changes almost. I mean, someone's traveling or relocating or doing but at the same time, it is a culture that's very customer centric, very execution focused, and through that, and sort of remote in its DNA. So it allows it to be incredibly high performing.
Yeah, I agree. I too came from Microsoft, so I can tell you, working in a room with no windows and no remote option was much. And I've accomplished more at Deal in years than I have in my entire career being remote. So it's really, really awesome what we're doing. All right, another one here for you. How does remote work affect the search for talent and global hiring? And why is this a challenge for many growing companies? Any advice for the startups in the audience here?
So, I mean, I think it is the greatest bit of leverage a new company can have. I will go back to sort of my Twilio experience. I could hire 3 to 4 humans for every one I would hire in the Bay Area by going global. And that was amazing. And the number of my staff that were still top, with no degradation in quality or talent. And it was like, look, folks were, this is where my family is. This is where, I have loved ones. This is kind of where I'd be, to be able to access that global talent in a really, really great way. And being able to, be the employer of choice in cities, being able to sort of be the most sort of attractive company, where good luck trying to do that in the Bay Area, right? It's an unwinnable game for a small company. What's also really nice is that, once you start to get that nucleus, you become like the being able to pull from a network in a market is incredible, and being able to sort of do that in a repeatable way. The downside is, how do you hire? How do you like legal, all of that HR stuff, which is where we kind of come in, and we've been really make it so it's pretty seamless. But I will say there is incredible talent at every point in the planet. I mean, I think most of you are visiting here, and being able to unlock that it's a game changer, because what we do is built on people. Like, it's not like it's machines or, like a car dealership, you need like a certain plot of land or a farm. Like, it is human capital and human talent, and being able to be the most worker friendly, being able to let people be where they need to be, being able to sort of find people wherever they are and meet them on their terms. It gives a company who's trying to start early an incredible advantage for the thing that will differentiate us, which is human talent.
Yeah, it's connecting, global talent with opportunity without borders. So I love it. I love what we do. Can we dive deeper into what are some challenges for founders, specifically around immigration, payroll, taxes?
I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that understanding legal, compliance, taxation, HR stuff, especially as a founder, early stage founder, it's impossible to do in one country, let alone do it in 100. It's just a new thing. And, it's common. One can act with the best faith and end up doing something just not right. So being able to have something, so it becomes an enormous barrier, right? Because the ability to access talent's amazing, but the activation energy of being able to sort of start a new entity and you need to get an office, or you don't need to get an office, but you need to get a mailing thing. You've had to file all these forms. It just it makes it so it's just not worth it, right? The cost of the ROI just isn't there. But with a platform like Deal, it's a couple minutes. It's trivial. So it really changes the ROI equation almost immediately.
No more multiple forms. Who wants to do forms? So I'm going to dive in before we dive into questions for Aaron. Just wanted to let you all know that after lunch and after the next talk, we're going to be doing some startup huddles specifically around immigration, payroll, and taxes. And I just wanted to point my team out here. I know we took a poll online, and I just want to go over your results quickly. About 18% of you said your biggest challenge currently is immigration. About 45% said payroll. And about 36% said taxes. And I know along with that was fundraising and those challenges. I know you heard a lot about crowdfunding and grants and angel investing, and it's really coming from a business standpoint versus an immigration standpoint, how that differs. So I'd like to point out a few of my teammates who will be here to answer those questions more in depth. We have Ahmed over here that will be our immigration expert. So if you have any questions around immigration and fundraising and what that looks like, please see Ahmed for our startup huddles. And for payroll, we have Jack. And Jack will dive deeper into any of your payroll questions that you have. And Daniel is our expert on taxes. So any of these questions you have, please see us later. We'll talk in depthly about any of your unique situation and any struggles that you're facing. But right now, I would like to go over to Aaron. If anyone has any questions for Aaron, please raise your hand. All right, you over here.
Hello, my name is Alexander. I'm actually originally from Long Island too, so back that's cool to see New York. Yeah, no problem. So I'm a business development manager for a company called Ruby London. They're based in the UK. I helped them move from the UK to the US, and we're based mostly in gig staff. So we do a lot of entertainment where it comes to nightlife, weddings, birthday parties, things like that. So we hire a lot of waiting staff, bartenders, and entertainment like still walkers, things like that. Our main issue right now is that when it comes to having all these different employees that come around and they work for a little bit and then they go on and off, the contracts and all the background that goes into hiring them and having them work in these contract-based roles kind of gets convoluted in a sense. Deal, in a sense, I mean, I'm thinking Deal would be something that would help kind of get through a lot of different employees, or is it more designed for HR in the sense of you have a team of people and this is your team of people kind of, and I'm not sure if I got it across.
No, so the question is to sort of inaccurate, or ineloquently summarize.
Yeah.
For companies that are sort of have, I would say, transient workers, gig staff, stuff like that.
Right.
Can we help? I mean, absolutely. If you think about this, is actually where it's very cost efficient, especially for the independent contractor stuff. And the way to think about it is, if you have to do all of the sort of, I would say, operational burden of bringing people on, not knowing when you're going to see them next, it's untenable to do in-house. We're really good at it.
Okay.
That is our core flow.
Awesome.
And so it's,
yeah, I had the owner already sign up for a demo, so look out for Lisa.
and honestly, when I onboarded myself, it was 10 minutes and you're good to go. And it's because we really want to be the most worker friendly platform for this. We really care deeply about that experience and bring frankly, a consumer lens to it versus a, something that's sort of very kludgy and focused on internal back office.
Love the excitement. All right, over here, Amina.
I thought that the wording you chose, Jess, for one of your questions to Aaron was quite interesting because you were asking about in-person versus remote work as though they're mutually exclusive. And as I see it, there are lots of ways to work together in person in remote settings. I would argue that we're doing that now because we're all remote now, but we're together. I think that sometimes we have this misconception that remote working from home, which is pretty isolating, are actually synonymous. But post-pandemics, there's so many opportunities to work together in remote settings. And I'm just wondering, as a company that is remote first, how do you engage your own teammates in person? Do you, first of all? And if you do, how often and what sorts of services do you use for that?
So it's an exceptional point you're making, which is just because you don't have to have an office or you have to be in the same place doesn't mean that there is not value in co-work, in being co-located. And also, frankly, the economics of not having to pay real estate allow for that in a pretty compelling way. So kind of what happens for us is there is I'll think about it from like a deep work perspective and then sort of a culture and connection perspective. Mm-hmm. So from a culture and connection perspective, the reality is people sort of gravitate to N, where N for us is probably 15 to 20, but like for other organizations probably is like 3 to 4 different places where everyone's within a couple hours of that. So there is, inevitably giving sort of room space support for people to kind of like, do the dinner, do the co-work. Everyone can get a WeWork card for places they're not WeWork. We're solved for that as well. Then there's the deep work problem, which is making sure you're holding space to bring people together to do, a planning thing, a sort of getting a project over a line that's complicated, a like big feature launch, something like that. Yeah. Where I think a lot of companies really struggle is they try and be hybrid in a way it becomes a 2-tier system, which is if they're doing deep work, 8 people are in the room, 4 are on the video, like those 4 just aren't, it doesn't work in the same way. And so, the thing is about giving the flexibility, but when you want to be co-located, be co-located, right? Like be there, make sure that's the first class citizen, or when you're going to be remote, be remote. So the hybrid thing, it's where you kind of create that 2-tiered system that really, I think a lot of folks struggle and people are disincentivized.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really good question. Daniel.
Quick question here. How we want to be the most friendly platform for workers, for example, but also I often, when I am speaking with our prospective clients, I often get asked, what about the infrastructure required to facilitate a remote team? You need maybe like more advanced messaging channels. You also need like video calling channels. I often get asked, how about like taxes and accounting and all of these things? And I know, recently we introduced like deal bookkeeping, for example, but do you foresee the company going down the road of being able to provide like this all-in-one solution for remote work? Or do we want to stay in a core to our function of being, the remote worker friendly platform specifically? And just kind of how do you think that all plays into enabling companies to have like a remote function, right? And to its truest or largest extent, essentially.
A great question. So I'll tackle on a few different angles. First, our aspiration is to support work globally, but that also means here, right? We have products that kind of both support, like traditional payroll, those other things, as well as these sort of remote workers scenarios. We're good for both. I think that there's a thing around saying if you started with the most complicated situation where you're trying to figure out all of these different things in different places with different regulatory, different taxes, bringing it down to the sort of more, I would say, traditional cases is actually really easy versus I think other folks in the space who are trying to come from, they just did payroll in the US to try and work their way up is really, really, really hard. I mean, even like, just think about the software, right? The software, the concept of like international and multiple language was like primary at day one versus if you grew in the US and you try to extend, you're having to re-architect core systems. So it just gets hard. It's always the other is a second class citizen. And so I think if you can do it everywhere, you can also do it one place. In terms of like being a platform, there are things that, so I think we all know that there's a set of tools that we learned during the pandemic, right? No one thought that we could go remote. Every company learned how to do it. Every human learned how to do it in about a week. It was, we got there pretty quick. And those tools are great. So, but when you're a platform, there are certain things you're like, this is what we're going to be really good at. And we think that we want to offer the best service for. And there's like Slack's really good at what it does. Teams really good at what it does. We have a great partner, Hafi, who like is really good at shipping laptops to you when you start a new employee. The expense, like they're really good at what they do. And like, we want to be able to enable those folks to do that best of class stuff. Our goal is to be the hub, is to be that sort of the control point where look, you're hiring a new gig worker, you can put it in one place, it happens, and all of those other systems automatically follow on. And so it's just, it enables that. And if you need to manage that, if they need to sort of, that person is no longer with you, or you need to move them, or you need to, that we can just follow that entire life cycle.
All right, fantastic. So it looks like we still have room for a few more questions, and then we're going to break for lunch in about 10, 15 minutes. But let's start off with one right here.
Hi there, my name is Carol, and I had a question regarding to the platform, in essence, with the employee experience. Because from what I'm understanding, you want to be there at the beginning to help them grow and scale and provide those services that no one wants to deal with, the HR, the payroll, but it's so important. My question is about the employee experience and culture. And I was wondering if there is something that you also incorporate with that so that there is this user experience through it as if they are, I look at employees like customers as well, and you want to retain them. You want them to grow with you, especially at startup. You want them to be your best brand ambassador. So I'd love to know if there's anything that you're doing that's addressing the culture side. And that's kind of where my heart is. So I'm always looking for that. And also the second part to that was I would love to know, there are a lot of other companies that are kind of adding on to programs, platforms such as yours to help measure, like Better Up, Thrive Global. They do well-being, wellness kind of checks that work with different software to help the people department see, hey, there's some stress going on in our, IT department. What's going on over there, the chatter, things like that. So I just kind of wanted to see what well-being and culture is being addressed in there.
I'm actually, I'm reminded of my experience when the pandemic hit. And everyone, and what was my first expectation is that family with kids, oh my God, childcare, everything's going to go terribly wrong. Or folks in, New York or London where apartments are tiny and you're living in a closet because you always are supposed to be out. And that was like the logical thought. And what I realized is actually that was not the case. The folks that had a really hard time were not my sort of fresh out of college with roommate folks. It was actually the folks that were on their own. They were sort of living by themselves. They didn't have a long-term partner yet. They were just kind of, because there was isolation. And it was like, those are the folks we had to look after. We really need to reach out and know that. And so it's personally important to be able to find the early warning signals of folks that are there. that are not feeling connected, that are not feeling that. There's all the stuff that we can kind of do informally. It's like you check in, it's the one-on-ones, it's the social events, it's whatnot. But really kind of sort of making sure that there's that engagement. On the flip side, which is less exciting, is the folks that are doing nothing, that are overemployed, as we call this, doing 3 or 4 jobs, being able to sort of think for all of that, being like, what is that level of engagement? It's a problem that we're looking at very closely, and it's something we're both to get from a health perspective, but also the other thing. There's a lot more that's going to be coming in a couple months around that.
All right, and then right over here, this will be the last question. So
Thank you. Last but not the least, right? So I have a question regarding the taxes in different countries, especially for a startup, suppose like less than 5 people working, right? Some are contractors, some are employees, 1 or 2 in the US, some in India, maybe 1 in Europe or Singapore. So how do you handle that kind of taxes for the startup? Especially like some countries might not have a W-9 at the end of the year, like US sends for the tax filing.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the different criteria or different things you have in place for those kind of small teams which are distributed across multiple countries and they have both contractors as well as employees?
That is our average case,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is our bread and butter. And so what it is that if you think about sort of the suite of things, we have an independent contractor product that has service in a lot of countries. You have what's called an employer of record. So someone can be an employee of one of our subsidiaries and they sort of solve for those things. We also have a global payroll solution, which is same that allows you to pay people as employees if you have your own entity. We can help you create an entity. All of those things. So it is by design, it is sort of core to our DNA to solve for exactly what that is, where there's some cases over here, some cases over here, some cases over here. And that's why we, part of why I think we so naturally became a platform. And frankly, if you think about most tech startups, why we're a platform so early is because if you're being worker-centric, if you're being sort of company-centric, like the case you're talking about is table stakes. If you do not solve for that, you are not solving the problem. You're still putting the burden on the company, and you're not letting the entrepreneur do the thing they're really good at. So that is an average day for us. Like that's not even that's like, okay, yeah, sure. What would you like to do tomorrow? Because that's easy.
Well, thank you, because I think that will help a lot of startups.
Absolutely.
all right. Any final closing thoughts from both of you from Deal? Looking forward to hearing about this.
No, I think we'd love to hear from you more. If you have more in-depth question on taxes, Daniel is your man. He's our expert. So join us at our startup huddles. We'd really like to dive deeper with you on these issues and solve them in real time. Let's do it.
Thanks, bunch. This is where I go into a 20-minute monologue because lunch is out there and I should just punish you all.
Go eat.
No, go eat. You have our folks. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much again. And thank you, Aaron, for not doing a 20-minute monologue at this point. Please go enjoy lunch and be back here in about an hour, 15 minutes. Thank you again.